Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of the Brocast where we give you bite-sized bits of best practices designed to help you be a better leader and a more effective communicator. I'm your host, Jarrett Bro. Each week on the Brocast, we put a question out at the beginning of the week for you to discuss, and at the end of the week, we look at some of the most interesting observations, and that's what we're about to do right now. Our question this week was, is it ever okay to ask a reporter a question? Again, the question is it ever okay to ask a reporter a question? Great observations from you this week. Kim says whether you ask a reporter a question really depends on the relationship and the context. Interesting, but some of her colleagues go a lot deeper, especially Kate. Kate, like me, is a media trainer. She says, absolutely. She says, before the interview, ask lots of questions, check their credentials, confirm the topic, negotiate the location. She says, discuss how it's going to be used, and find out who else they are talking to. I agree with every one of those points, Kate. She goes on to say that during the interview, you have about 10 seconds to ask a question back to diffuse any type of a misleading question before a misleading question from the reporter gains traction and credibility. And then she says you can always ask for clarification when there is a confusing question. I agree wholeheartedly with you, Kate. Some great observations. Benjamin says, absolutely, Jarrett, especially during the pre-interview interview. I often call that the interview before the interview, but that's a great time to ask lots of questions. Benjamin goes on to say you want to set yourself up and your spokespeople to be successful. Ask for clarity in questions that you don't clearly understand. And he says, ask a question to stimulate further discussion and to re-emphasize your messages. And a question phrase that he likes to use to the reporter is, did you know? And then go on to add some more information. Mark says, assuming that an interview with a reporter is yet another episode of human communications, namely that it's two-way, he says yes, Jarrett. He says he remembers diffusing what would have been a bit of ugly news coverage in the New York Times several years ago when he took the steam out of reporters' gotcha line of questioning by asking a question back. And he says if it's a radio or television interview, whether it's live or recorded, he says you better be ready to ask lots of questions beforehand. In my own practice, when I'm teaching a spokesperson how to prepare for an interview, or if I'm the spokesperson, I will ask lots of questions beforehand, but I will clearly ask questions in the middle of the interview, whether it's on tape or not. Among the things that you have to be aware of is that many reporters today do not do a lot of homework before they come out to interview you. They know just enough information to be dangerous. And as a way to cover up their lack of knowledge and camouflage what they don't know, they will ask kind of long, rambling questions, and you're not really sure what they're getting at. Know why? Because they're not sure what they're getting at. And I've watched lots of people who try to be polite, try to answer the question, and that just leads to lots of trouble because sometimes you're giving away information you shouldn't. I tend to be a bit more obnoxious and straightforward in life, and I will clearly say, I'm sorry, I don't understand the premise of the question. I don't understand what you're asking. Could you rephrase it? That is one of the best questions you can ever use. Could you rephrase it? It forces the reporter to narrow the question, and what I've observed is often when they narrow the question, it has almost nothing to do with their original question. One other final note. I remember years ago watching an episode of 60 Minutes where the governor of Texas was being interviewed, and Mike Wallace asked her a tough question, and she on 60 Minutes asked Mike Wallace a tough question back. And Mike Wallace has a stunned look on his face and he says, you don't ask questions, I'm the one asking the questions. She said, well, I just asked you one and I'm waiting for you to answer. She was straightforward, she was tough, she put Mike Wallace in his place. You have the right to ask questions back and to hold a reporter accountable by asking them to clarify their question if it's a misleading or ambiguous question. I hope these observations help you in your practice as you do interviews with the media. Always remember, media training is so critical. A full day at least once a year and at least 10 minutes prior to walking out for any interview. Practice, practice, practice. Well, we will be back next week with another episode of the Brocast. For the Brocast, I'm Jarrett Brough.